STUPIDITY-BLACK. This poem and his other writings about Roman history became popular, and Francesco Petrarca became a celebrity throughout Europe. On April 8, 1341, he became Rome's poet laureate and was crowned on Capitoline Hill. A poet laureate is someone appointed by the government to compose poems for special events and occasions. Even into modern days, to become a poet laureate is one of a poet's highest honors. After this, Francesco traveled across Europe, where he searched out lost manuscripts from ancient Greece and Rome. He took these manuscripts, fixed them up, and with the help of others translated them for other Italians to read.
So this poem was very famous in Europe. It went all through Europe and made this man famous. And so this is not some word that just existed a long time ago from some tribe in on the continent, and it got lost until, you know, the late 1800s, and became famous in America. So, and they was not calling these people Africans when they came over here. They was calling that continent Negro land, meaning black land. They was calling those people Negroes. They didn't make a distinction between the different tribes and nations and families that was down there. See, this abased people, these foolish people, this ignorant people, this narcissistic people, they understanding was they was red and everybody else was black and not a part of their nation. They lumped everybody together. They came up with a philosophy of color. They took away the names of people and put their names on the people. They was famous for doing these things. And so for our people to sit up here and use the name that these people are using is ridiculous. Now this dude, Scipio Africanus, he was a famous Roman general, and what this other dragon who wrote the poem Africa, he just was going back into their history when they was ruling. See, they was ruling before the so-called Dark Ages. And so once they came back into rulership, he went back and said, we ruled at once. We ruled before. Same thing with what we doing. We saying we ruled Europe before. We got nobility in Europe, in Russia. Pictures all over the place. And so that's what they were saying. They were saying we ruled Europe before. We had famous generals, famous peoples that was ruling before this Dark Ages, before the Byzantine Empire, before these dark people came and started ruling. And the Dark Ages wasn't a time of nationality and identifying people either. They just had an empire and they was ruling. They wasn't identifying themselves on a large scale, even though they was calling themselves Anglo-Saxons, meaning the sons of Jacob. But these individuals who want to adopt this man's name, they going after their slave master. They listening to the slave master and what he's saying about the situation. Because at this time, 1874, that's during Reconstruction. They started pushing this name during Reconstruction. They went back and said in 1400, we had came up with a poem. And this guy was pushing, he was famous in Europe for pushing his ideology, pushing his philosophy, saying that this is the Dark Ages. He didn't identify the people. He just used some code word for the situation. The Dark Ages. This is when the dark people was ruling. He didn't say, oh, these were people that went back to the Israelites. These are people that went back to the sons of Jacob. They was calling themselves Anglo-Saxon sons of Jacob. He didn't give no detail. He just said these are a bunch of dark peoples. In 1874, when they let the Negroes off the plantation, this man, or not even him, he probably was dead by then because he was during the Renaissance in the 1300s. So these some slave master, so-called rat bastards over there in our homeland or in Europe, trying to formulate a plan how to rob the real Israelites of their identity. And they come up with using this word, Africa. It was a famous word because he created the Dark Ages. So this is where the Dark Ages created by him. Let's give them people a name. Let's say everybody that's dark, call them Africans. See, it ain't hard to figure out what the heck these dragons are doing because they stupid. They foolish. Let's call these dark peoples. Well, let me get that other picture. Bingo. It says at the bottom, it says he is also known for being the first to develop the concept of Dark Ages. See, people wasn't even thinking about them folks to be no dark peoples. Oh, this when the dark people was ruling. He didn't even use black. He just said this is when the dark people was ruling. This was they kingdom. They was ruling at this time. You had all kind of Roman generals that was dark skinned. See, that's more respectable than black. But these people that had us on the plantation, they say, oh, them black. They called us black. They took it to a derogatory word and turned the word black into derogatory because they was always called black or dark. But for people to sit up here and use this name that this man made famous in Europe and that the slave master in 1874 connected to dark and dark rulership and dark people and dark nations. You know, you can say that Dark Ages could be dark nations. The dark nations was ruling. But you see the connection. The same person who made Africa famous made Dark Ages famous and dark nations that famous. And the slave masters just put the thing together. They just added both of them together and say them some Africans. Then it seemed like they got a bunch of these Hamites to go up there and put this darn big time meeting together in the 60s and push this African thing a little bit further because they wasn't using this name a lot, man. This African name was not being used until this dragon jumped on the scene and until these the children of these dragons who had done got rich off the slave labor from selling wine and sugar and cotton, they went back into the records and saw that this man had created a name for the dark peoples. And it was going to also represent him and the Roman general. And so the Negro talking about, we going to unite all the African peoples. What is the African peoples? What are you talking about, man? If you don't sit down somewhere, then they talking about skin color. This idiot, Francesco, whatever his name, he talking about a dang on dark peoples. First of all, the Arabs dark, because the Arabs coming out of Ishmael and Shem and Ham mixed together. Both of them was dark, and they would have stayed dark until the Edomites and these red dragons would have started mixing with them. Then you got the what you call them, the Chinese, and you got the Indian, Elam. Them people, you go in there store, come and get some of the bread and then sugar. They be talking and had a little dot in the forehead. Them people, some of them dark as heck too. So what are you talking about? You uniting dark-skinned people? Because Africa don't mean nothing. Africa ain't nothing, man. That continent don't represent dark people. That is not a landmass that represents dark people. This idiot started this concept. And so when you go into looking at how they developed this skin color philosophy, and these Negroes over here want to talk about uniting some freaking peoples. You're not going to unite nobody, man. You don't got no power. You have no power to do anything. The Renaissance happened because he was loose. The angel came and loosed them. The angel bound these peoples for 1,000 years after they was ruling as Roman Caesars and Roman generals. And he bound they behind where they couldn't rule no more. The Byzantine Empire came into play. The dark nations came into play, and they was ruling. And it wasn't no dark nation. It was the Israelites. See, the real kings of the earth came and started ruling again, because they was created to be the kings of the earth, and the angel had to bind them up. See, what you think? If the angel bound these dragons up for 1,000 years, he just released the real kings. Then the angel came back and bound the Israelites up again. That's all that went to happen. Because these people, the Israelites were ruling everything, man. We was ruling Russia. Europe is named after a freaking Israelite woman. Her name was Europa. They named that after a Israelite woman. So how in the world they call themselves European, and that's backwards. And then a freaking Negro call himself an African after a Roman general, and this idiot writing a poem. So Negroes is totally lost, and they pushing this black. Nobody is a color, man. Nobody is a freaking color. Black. See, the white peoples started their name in 1681. And that goes back to them trying to hide who they really are. Because they was known as red peoples. Because you can see the blood coming through their skin. They was known as the Red Nation. And this Red Nation had a punishment coming in a destiny with slavery and a major punishment. And they didn't want to be connected to the punishment. So they say we need to call ourselves white people. And they always been calling the other nations dark. Even when they was in Italy, or they called it the Italian, Latin, when they spoke Latin, they called Niger or nigger. They was calling the peoples dark because they was coming into Europe, not Europe, they was coming into Rome and Italy as dark. They was darker than the Edomites. The Edomites was pale and red. So they were seeing these people from Jerusalem, and they said, these are a bunch of Negroes, man. These are a bunch of dark people. And then this man rebirthed the situation. He rebirthed the same thinking that they always thought. When they see a bunch of dark people pop up on the scene, they call them dark, black, whatever. Blackie. They got all kind of minstrel shows, and it's amazing to them. But a Negro want to sit up here and push out their philosophy of people is represented by their skin color. Skin color don't mean nothing. People represented by land and their father, their daddy. That's what represents people. Family, families. That's why people have land masses and all of their people look the same. The Moabites, the Chinese, they over there in their land and they all hanging with each other and look alike. The Arabs stick together. See, these people don't sit around here and worry about a skin color. It ain't got nothing to do with no skin color. The land is the most important part. And we fled into the so-called land of Ham and Canaan, and because we had already went and invaded their land and made it our own, the land of milk and honey, then we left out of that land that we took from them and flooded further down into the other land that we let them keep, or wasn't where they was inhabited. So on that slave coast of Africa, this is called the slave coast. The map clearly showed. Let me get that map. Now, on the slave coast, where they took us from, it clearly say the kingdom of Judah. Slave coast, kingdom of Judah. It's not hard to see. This African crap came way in the late 1800s. They went to pushing this African thing, worrying about what this dragon creating. And now you got a bunch of people talking about African peoples. We got to unite all the African peoples. What African peoples? Ain't no African peoples, man. They was calling these folk Negroes. They knew that was the kingdom of Judah, the villages of Judah. Now, see, in West Africa, we was known to have villages named after us. So these dragons knew what they was doing. This is John Barbot, who they called Gene. In 1655, they knew what he was doing. He had documented the situation. And so they knew that our people was from the tribe of Judah and the Israelites. When they went over there to snatch some of us up. And so people was running around here just so ignorant. Them people was doing research and they was getting rich off the colonizing here. They was getting rich off colonizing our peoples. So, come on, man. What is this African mess? And these black people, ain't nobody no skin color. Who gives a dang about a skin color? You sleep with one white woman and your skin color is finished. Your children coming out light as heck. Then, who caring about this man named Africanus and this poet who made the name famous, Africa? Nobody is no African. it was all kind of nations on that landmass, and they represented who they were and kept their culture, especially the Israelites who fled into Africa. But the Arabs was down there too. They down there selling us. They running around everywhere. See, Ishmael, he always been roaming all over the place. The Chinese roaming all over the place. They ain't never stayed at their home. They was all over the place too. But these Hamites that they try to push us and connect us to, they was the majority, and we was a small, we stayed in a small area and represented from that area due to the so-called Romans until we took back over in what, it was 193 BC, 193 AD, we took over and ruled for 1,000 years to 1492. So these people ain't did too much. They only been ruling since 1492, and they created this African mess. We was ruling before then during the so-called Dark Ages. See, but I'm going to leave it there. All praises to Yahweh, Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Hashem, Kakadash, double honors to the elders, pushing the truth, peace to the elect worldwide. Our kingdom is at hand. Shalom.